Book 2, Canto 4 of The Faerie Queene by Edmund Spenser. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Thomas Copeland.
Canto 4. Guyon does Furor bind in chains, and stops occasion, delivers Phaedon, and therefore by strife is railed upon. In brave pursuit of honorable deed, there is, I know not what great difference between the vulgar and the noble seed, which unto things of valorous pretence seems to be born by native influence, as feats of arms and love to entertain. But chiefly skill to ride seems a science proper to gentle blood. Some others feign to manage steeds, as did this vaunter, but in vain. But he, the rightful owner of that steed, who well could manage and subdue his pride, the whiles on foot was forced for to yeed, with that black palmer his most trusty guide, who suffered not his wandering feet to slide, but when strong passion or weak fleshliness would from the right way seek to draw him wide, he would through temperance and steadfastness teach him the weak to strengthen and the strong suppress. It fortuned, forth faring on his way, he saw from far, or seemed for to see, some troublous uproar or contentious fray, whereto he drew in haste to agree. A madman, or that feigned mad to be, drew by the hair along upon the ground a handsome stripling with great cruelty, whom sore he bet and gored with many a wound, that cheeks with tears and sides with blood did all abound. And him behind a wicked hag did stalk in ragged robes and filthy disarray. Her other leg was lame, that she note walk, but on a staff her feeble steps did stay. Her locks, that loathly were and hoary gray, grew all afore, and loosely hung unrolled, but all behind was bald and worn away, that none thereof could ever taken hold. And eke her face, ill favored, full of wrinkles old. And ever as she went, her tongue did walk in foul reproach and terms of vile despite, provoking him by her outrageous talk to heap more vengeance on that wretched wight. Sometimes she wrought him stones wherewith to smite, sometimes her staff, though it her one leg were, withouten which she could not go upright. Any evil mean she did forbear, that might him move to wrath and indignation rear. The noble Guyon, moved with great remorse, approaching, first the hag did thrust away, and after, adding more impetuous force, his mighty hands did on the madman lay, and plucked him back, who, all on fire, straightway against him turning all his fell intent, with beastly brutish rage gan him assay, and smote and bit and kicked and scratched and rent, and did he wist not what in his avengement. And sure he was a man of mickle might, had he had governance it well to guide. But when the frantic fit inflamed his sprite, his force was vain, and strook more often wide than at the aimed mark which he had eyed. And oft himself he chanced to hurt unwares, whilst reason, blent through passion, naught descried, but as a blindfold bull at random fares, and where he hits, naught knows, and whom he hurts, naught cares. His rude assault and rugged handling strange seemed to the knight, that aye with foe in fair defence and goodly managing of arms was wont to fight. Yet na the mo was he abashed now, not fighting so, but more enfierced through his currish play, him sternly gripped, and hailing to and fro, to overthrow him strongly did assay, but overthrew himself unwares and lower lay. And being down, the villain sore did beat and bruise with clownish fists his manly face, and eke the hag with many a bitter threat still called upon to kill him in the place. With whose reproach and odious menace the knight, emboiling in his haughty heart, knit all his forces, and gan soon unbrace his grasping hold, so lightly did upstart, and drew his deadly weapon to maintain his part. Which when the palmer saw, he loudly cried, "Not so, O Guyon! Never think that so that monster can be mastered or destroyed. He is not such a foe as steel can wound, or strength can overthrow. That same is Furor, cursed cruel wight, that unto knighthood works much shame and woe. And that same hag, his aged mother, hight Occasion, the root of all wrath and despite. With her, whoso will raging Furor tame, must first begin, and well her ammanage. First her restrain from her reproachful blame and evil means, with which she doth enrage a frantic son, and kindles his courage. Then, when she is withdrawn, or strong withstood, it's eke his idle fury to assuage, and calm the tempest of his passion would. The banks are overflown when stopped is the flood. Therewith Sir Guyon left his first emprise, and turning to that woman, fast her hent by the horelocks that hung before her eyes, and to the ground her threw. Yet nold she stent her bitter railing and foul revilement, but still provoked her son to wreak her wrong. But natheless he did her still torment, and catching hold of her ungracious tongue, thereon an iron lock did fasten firm and strong. Then, when as use of speech was from her reft, with her two crooked hands she signs did make, and beckoned him the last help she had left. But he that last left help away did take, and both her hands fast bound unto a stake that she note stir. Then gan her son to fly full fast away, and did her quite forsake. But Guyon after him in haste did hie, and soon him overtook in sad perplexity. In his strong arms he stiffly him embraced, who him gain striving not at all prevailed, for all his power was utterly defaced, and furious fits at erst quite were enquailed. Oft he reinforced, and oft his forces failed, yet yield he would not, nor his rancor slack. Then him to ground he cast, and rudely haled, and both his hands fast bound behind his back, and both his feet in fetters to an iron rack. With 100 iron chains he did him bind, and 100 knots that did him sore constrain. Yet his great iron teeth he still did grind, and grimly gnash, threatening revenge in vain. His burning eyen, whom bloody strakes did stain, stared full wide, and threw forth sparks of fire, and more for rank despite than for great pain, shaked his long locks colored like copper wire, and bit his tawny beard to show his raging ire. Thus when as Guyon furor had captived, turning about he saw that wretched squire, whom that mad man of life nigh late deprived, lying on ground, all soiled with blood and mire. Whom when as he perceived to respire, he gan to comfort, and his wounds to dress. Being at last recured, he gan inquire what hard mishap him brought to such distress, and made that caitive's thrall the thrall of wretchedness. With heart then throbbing, and with watery eyes, "Fair sir," quoth he, "what man can shun the hap that hidden lies unwares him to surprise? Misfortune waits advantage to entrap the man most wary in her whelming lap. So me, weak wretch, of many weakest one, unweeting and unware of such mishap, she brought to mischief through occasion, where this same wicked villain did me light upon. It was a faithless squire that was the source of all my sorrow, and of these sad tears, with whom from tender dug of common nurse at once I was upbrought, and eft, when years more ripe us reason lent to choose our peers, ourselves in league of vowed love we knit, in which we long time without jealous fears or faulty thoughts continued as was fit, and for my part I vow dissembled not a whit. It was my fortune, common to that age, to love a lady fair of high degree, the which was born of noble parentage, and set in highest seat of dignity, yet seemed no less to love than loved to be. Long I her served, and found her faithful still, ne ever thing could cause us disagree. Love that two hearts makes one, makes eke one will, each strove to please, and others' pleasure to fulfill. My friend, hight Philemon, I did partake of all my love and all my privity, who greatly joyous seemed for my sake, and gracious to that lady as to me. Ne ever wight that mote so welcome be as he to her, withouten blot or blame. Ne ever thing that she could think or see, but unto him she would impart the same. O wretched man, that would abuse so gentle dame! At last such grace I found, and means I wrought, that I that lady to my spouse had won. Accord of friends, consent of parents sought, affiance made, my happiness begun. There wanted naught but few rites to be done, which marriage make. That day too far did seem. Most joyous man, on whom the shining sun did show his face, myself I did esteem. and that my falser friend did no less joyous deem. But ere that wished day his beam disclosed, he, either envying my toward good, or of himself to treason ill disposed, one day unto me came in friendly mood, and told for secret how he understood that lady whom I had to me assigned had both disdained her honorable blood, and eke the faith which she to me did bind, and therefore wished me stay till I more truth should find. The gnawing anguish and sharp jealousy which his sad speech infixed in my breast, rankled so sore and festered inwardly, that my engrieved mind could find no rest, till that the truth thereof I did outrest, and him besought, by that same sacred band betwixt us both, to counsel me the best. He then with solemn oath and plighted hand assured, ere long the truth to let me understand. Ere long, with like again he boarded me, saying he now had bolted all the flower, and that it was a groom of base degree, which of my love was partner paramour, who used in a darksome inner bower her oft to meet, which better to approve, he promised to bring me at that hour, when I should see that would me nearer move, and drive me to withdraw my blind abused love. This graceless man, for furtherance of his guile, did court the handmaid of my lady dear, who, glad to bosom his affection vile, did all she might more pleasing to appear. One day, to work her to his will more near, he wooed her thus: "Priene," so she hight, "what great despite doth fortune to thee bear, thus lowly to abase thy beauty bright, that it should not deface all others' lesser light? But if she had her least help to thee lent, t'adorn thy form according thy desert, their blazing pride thou wouldest soon have blent, and stained their praises with thy least good part. Ne should fair Claribel with all her art, though she thy lady be, approach thee near. For proof thereof, this evening, as thou art, array thyself in her most gorgeous gear, that I may more delight in thy embracement dear." The maiden, proud through praise and mad through love, him hearkened to, and soon herself arrayed, the whiles to me the treacher did remove his crafty engine, and, as he had said, me leading, in a secret corner laid, the sad spectator of my tragedy. Where left, he went, and his own false part played, disguised like that groom of base degree, whom he had feigned the abuser of my love to be. Eftsoons he came unto the appointed place, and with him brought Priene, rich arrayed in Clarabella's clothes. Her proper face I not discerned in that darksome shade, but weened it was my love with whom he played. Ah God, what horror and tormenting grief my heart, my hands, mine eyes, and all assayed! Me liefer were 10,000 deaths as prief, than wound of jealous worm, and shame of such reprief. I home returning, fraught with foul despite, and chawing vengeance all the way I went, soon as my loathed love appeared in sight, with wrathful hand I slew her, innocent. That after soon I dearly did lament, for when the cause of that outrageous deed demanded, I made plain and evident, her faulty handmaid, which that bale did breathe, confessed how Philemon her wrought to change her weed. Which when I heard, with horrible affright and hellish fury, all enraged, I sought upon myself that vengeable despite to punish. Yet it better first, I thought, to wreak my wrath on him that first it wrought. To Philemon, false fator Philemon, I cast to pay that I so dearly bought.
Of deadly drugs I gave him drink anon, and washed away his guilt with guilty potion. Thus heaping crime on crime, and grief on grief, to loss of love, adjoining loss of friend, I meant to purge both with a third mischief, and in my woes beginner it to end. That was Priene. She did first offend, she last should smart. With which cruel intent, when I at her my murderous blade did bend, she fled away with ghastly dreariment, and I, pursuing my fell purpose, after went. Fear gave her wings, and rage enforced my flight. Through woods and plains so long I did her chase, till this Mad man, whom your victorious might hath now fast bound me met in middle space. As I her, so he me pursued apace, and shortly overtook. I, breathing ire, sore chafed at my stay in such a case, and with my heat kindled his cruel fire, which kindled once, his mother did more rage inspire. Betwixt them both they have me done to die through wounds and strokes, and stubborn handling, that death were better than such agony as grief and fury unto me did bring, of which in me yet sticks the mortal sting, that during life will never be appeased.
When he thus ended had his sorrowing, said Guyon, Squire, sore have ye been diseased, but all your hurts may soon through temperance be eased. Then gan the palmer thus, Most wretched man, that to affections does the bridle lend. In their beginning they are weak and wan, but soon through sufferance grow to fearful end. Whiles they are weak, betimes with them contend, for when they once to perfect strength do grow, strong wars they make, and cruel battery bend gainst fort of reason, it do overthrow. Wrath, jealousy, grief, love, this squire have laid thus low. Wrath, jealousy, grief, love, do thus expel. Wrath is a fire, and jealousy a weed. Grief is a flood, and love a monster fell. The fire of sparks, the weed of little seed, the flood of drops, the monster filth did breed. But sparks, seed, drops, and filth do thus delay. The sparks soon quench, the springing seed outweed, the drops dry up, and filth wipe clean away. So shall wrath, jealousy, grief, love die and decay. Unlucky squire, said Guyon, sith thou hast fallen into mischief through intemperance, henceforth take heed of that thou now hast passed, and guide thy ways with wary governance, lest worse betide thee by some later chance. But read how thou art named, and of what kin. Phaedon I hight, quoth he, and do advance mine ancestry from famous Corydon, who first to raise our house to honor did begin. Thus as he spake, lo, far away they spied a varlet running towards hastily, whose flying feet so fast their way applied, that round about a cloud of dust did fly, which mingled all with sweat did dim his eye. He soon approached, panting, breathless, hot, and all so soiled that none could him descry. His countenance was bold, and bashèd not for Guyon's looks, but scornful eye glance at him shot. Behind his back he bore a brazen shield, on which was drawn fair in colours fit a flaming fire in midst of bloody field, and round about the wreath this word was writ, Burnt I do burn. Right well beseemed it to be the shield of some redoubted knight. And in his hand two darts exceeding flit and deadly sharp he held, whose heads were dight in poison and in blood, of malice and despite. When he in presence came, to Guyon first he boldly spake, Sir knight, if knight thou be, abandon this forestalled place at erst, for fear of further harm I counsel thee, or bide the chance at thine own jeopardy. The knight at his great boldness wondered, and though he scorned his idle vanity, yet mildly him to purpose answered, for not to grow of naught he had conjectured. Varlet, this place most due to me I deem, yielded by him that held it forcibly. But whence should come that harm which thou dost seem to threat to him that minds his chance to buy? Pardie, said he, here comes and is hard by a knight of wondrous power and great assay, that never yet encountered enemy, but did him deadly daunt or foul dismay. Nay, thou for better hope, if thou his presence stay. How hight he then, said Guyon, and from whence? Pyrocles is his name, renowned far for his bold feats and hardy confidence, full oft approved in many a cruel war, the brother of Cymocles, both which are the sons of old Acrates in despite, Acrates son of Phlegeton and Jar, But Phlegethon is son of Herebus and night, but Herebus, son of eternity, is hight. So from immortal race he does proceed, that mortal hands may not withstand his might. Dread for his daring do and bloody deed, for all in blood and spoil is his delight. His am I, Aten, his in wrong and right, that matter make for him to work upon, and stir him up to strife and cruel fight. Fly therefore, fly this fearful stead anon, lest thy foolhardize work thy sad confusion. His be that care whom most it doth concern, said he. But whither with such hasty flight art thou now bound? For well mote I discern great cause that carries thee so swift and light. My lord, quoth he, me sent, and straight behight to seek occasion, whereso she be. For he is all disposed to bloody fight, and breathes out wrath and heinous cruelty. Hard is his hap that first falls in his jeopardy. Madman, said then the palmer, that does seek occasion to wrath and cause of strife. She comes unsought, and shunned follows eke. Happy who can abstain, when rancor rife kindles revenge, and threats his rusty knife. Woe never once, where every cause is caught, and rash occasion makes unquiet life. Then lo, where bound she sits whom thou hast sought, said Guyon, let that message to thy lord be brought. That when the varlet heard and saw, straightway he waxed wondrous wroth, and said, vile knight, that knights and knighthood dost with shame upbray, and showst an example of thy childish might, with silly weak old woman thus to fight. Great glory and gay spoil sure hast thou got, and stoutly proved thy puissance here in sight. That shall Pyrocles well requite, I wot, and with thy blood abolish so reproachful blot. With that one of his thrillant darts he threw, headed with ire and vengeable despite. The quivering steel his aimed end well knew, and to his breast itself intended right. But he was wary, and ere it impite in the meant mark, advanced his shield atween, on which it seizing, no way enter might, but back rebounding left the forkhead clean. Eftsoons he fled away, and might nowhere be seen.
End of Book 2, Canto 4. Recording by Thomas Copeland.